Right, so we're back today with Michael at Integra after all you guys asked for more videos, and today we're going to be looking at how to activate the glutes. Well, Michael is, I'm just the asked for this video.
The arse model.
That's it.
Yeah. Cool. So when we talk about the glutes, or when we think about the glutes, predominantly people think, if you turn that way for us, what we're going to do is actually use Stanley and we're going to use Luke, so we get this kind of superficial and some sort of deep view of the hips. When we talk about the glutes, people are just thinking about the glute max. So the thing that we want to do today is kind of just start to have this inside view of actually what goes into the muscles around this hip. If we take that glute max, which attaches along this sacrum and along this ilium, and there's a coccygeal attachment site down there, we can see that this muscle is a fan-shaped muscle. So we've got an attachment site that's down here on the femur that branches out in this direction. So on Luke, it's looking something like that. And obviously from the side, if you turn and face Stanley for us, we can see that there's an alignment that starts to protrude as you get around to this coccygeal division, and then it starts to dip underneath. So that's the thing that we're always looking at, and we've got this idea of how to train this muscle that attaches here. So if you remember from the first video, and if you remember from some of the other stuff that we've talked about, what's the role of this muscle? So the role of this muscle is to pull its two attachment sites together. So when you've got a muscle that's got these multiple attachment sites, we start to see that there's no one function for this muscle. There are actually multiple things. So this is the glute max. So what else do we have underneath here? And that's probably the most superficial thing that we're looking at. And again, over here, we're seeing that glute max looks like this. So underneath we've got this glute medius. So we've got an attachment site around here on this greater trochanter, this chunk of muscle, which comes up and attaches onto the top of this rim, this ilium. So if you, just the way you guys are looking on this video now, if you look at that, if you imagine this attachment site down at the bottom and this attachment site down at the top, if these two sides come together, what's going to happen to this bone? So this is going to move up in that direction. So this is going to create abduction. So we've got this glute medius, which is causing abduction. Now move it around a little bit more, and I'm going to move it so you guys can see like this. We've got a muscle that attaches here and comes down and attaches onto that point, and it looks like that. Again, if these two sides are coming together, if they're going to shorten, that's going to create abduction. So you've got a slightly different alignment from these two muscles. So like we looked at in the how to activate the lat video, why do we need to know where these muscles attach? So we can see what's the fully lengthened, what's the fully shortened position, and if our goal is to stimulate this muscle through a full range, how do we build an exercise through that full range? So let's take that, and obviously we didn't look at every single muscle that's involved in the hip. We didn't look at every single glute, but let's have a look at that glute max. So the glute max attaches onto that ilium, that sacrum, and it comes down onto his femur. If we wanted to get him into the most lengthened position, we've got some abduction, we've got some flexion even, then we've got some adduction. And we could start to look at, is there any rotation that's going to create some length there? But I think from this position, just where we are, just getting into that position of maximal hip flexion and adduction is the most lengthened position. So already what I want you guys to be thinking about is, how are you going to load this position? How are you going to do this with the exercises that you're doing? So these attachment sites, so the attachment sites here and the attachment sites here. So what do we need? We definitely know we need some extension. So extend your hip for me. We definitely know that we need some external rotation, so twist your leg out. And then it depends on which division. We might need a little bit of adduction, we might need a little bit of abduction. But if we just stay neutral, we're looking at extension and external rotation. Now if you turn over onto your back, what I want to do is think about how we're going to prepare these muscles for the exercises that we're going to do today. So the thing that I've got here is a force dynamometer, and this thing will show us how much force can be produced from a muscle. We didn't look at this last time when we looked at the lat, but I think it's kind of cool to explore this. So what I want to do, it's going to be really easy for the video for us to explore this glute medius. And remember from just a few minutes ago, where does that glute medius attach? Attaches onto that greater trochanter and comes around. And so the direction of the fibers is here. And you guys already know that this muscle, when it shortens, causes abduction. So what I want to do is go, let's see if we can prime that muscle. Let's see if we can activate that muscle to create more force when we get out here and do some exercises. And you can start to take these specific tools, these specific applications, and explore them with every exercise. So what I want to do, this is ready. I want to take your leg out to as far as that feels comfortable in terms of abduction. Twist your leg in a little bit for us. And all I want to do, if I hold that onto there, you're going to push out as hard as you can. Ready? And go. And relax. Bring that back in. So that came to 22.5. And what I want to do is just throw that down there. So there's a couple of things that we can do, but what I want to do is a really low level isometric. And we're going to go out to that point there. I don't want you to do anything now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and gently push this back in. So if I'm pushing this back in, what's resisting? It's all of those guys that are creating abduction. So hold that position, and I'm going to push in with a really small amount of force. And relax. Bring that back in. So which position did we get that muscle into? We got into the shortest position. Do we need to get into the shortest position? Nope. So we can do this in the lengthened, in the mid-range, and the shortened position. And it is advantageous to do that. But for the purpose of today, this is what we're going to just focus on. Let me take this.
What can they do if they haven't got a partner?
Yeah.
Is there any other sort of pre-activation stuff?
A wall.
Something.
So you doing the isometric. So if you bring this out, and imagine that my hand is a wall.
Yeah.
And all you're doing, and this is what we give our clients when they're training by themselves in a gym, and you're gently pushing in that direction.
Yeah.
So if you gently push out.
Yeah, it's the same.
And what we tend to do with our clients as well is, like we looked at with the lat, I want you to focus on this guy here. So I want you to focus, and I want you to be thinking about that muscle while we're trying to activate that. We're trying to increase neural drive. So bring this, let me just switch this on. Bring this out again for me. Okay. So twist that leg in. Ready? And go. And relax. So what did we have before? 22.5. 22.5 and then?
40.4.
That's pretty cool. So this is pretty consistent. And if you guys want to look at what the mechanisms are, look at something called post-activation potentiation. That might be something that is involved in this increasing the force. So when we're thinking about glute exercises, we've got these ideas in our head in terms of what's the best. But let's base it off anatomy. And so with these hip extensors, what did we have? We had movements in hip extension, hip abduction, hip adduction, and external rotation. So let's start to think about building exercises through each of these planes. So we get to hit the glutes in many different ways. So the first thing that we're going to look at is this bench. And we're going to look at this pure sagittal plane, this hip extension. So Luke, if you want to jump into there. So we've already set this up. And some people, we use this for spinal extension, and we use this for hip extension. But we're going to really focus on this now. So what I want you to do is don't allow any spinal motion to occur. So all the movement's going to be coming from the hip joint. Now if you can cross your arms across your chest if you want. But what I want to see, if I put my finger onto his sacrum, I want to see his sacrum moving at the same rate as everything else. And what he's seeking out there, and we've already assessed his active range, but we're seeking out some form of stretch in this position, and we know that he's not exceeding the range for this. Now, you've got a little bit more than that, I think. A little bit more, a little bit more. There we go to there. So in this position, and we're going to just make him hang out there for 2 minutes, what we can see is that he's got this resistance that's going down, and we've got another point of resistance here. It's all of these guys here that are preventing him from going further. Now don't get me wrong, we've still got some calf thing, and we've still got some spinal extension thing, but this is staying in that neutral position. We've got these guys that are not quite in their fully lengthened, because we just looked at that, but they're in a fully lengthened position, or a lengthened position. Now what I want you to do is just squeeze these guys a little bit more. You've got more in there. And I want you to think about bringing this guy towards this guy. So it's this muscle that's coming together, that's pulling on his sacrum, which is pulling all of this stuff up, and keep coming, keep coming, keep going. Stop there. Okay. and slowly go down again. So I want to see this moving. Now, usually when we're using that palpation that we looked at in the lat video, we talk about focusing on the muscle. So squeeze this, bring this up, a little bit more, and then one more. Now, what I can tell you with this exercise is that the hardest position, stop, is right there. This is the point that we've got an axis, and we've got a line of force that's somewhere in here. It's his center of mass of these limbs. And we can see that the moment arm is going to be the biggest. Now, as he comes up, because it arcs around, it starts to get easier. And you know that when you get into this position, this muscle starts to lose its strength. So you've all seen one of these machines. It's a hip abduction machine. And it's usually resigned in some corner of the gym and no one's ever using it. This is huge. And this has got a great potential in terms of affecting those hip extensors. So let's look at this position. So what position is this hip in? It's in 90 degrees. So it's actually about 80 degrees. So when your hip is moving in this direction, because this is the direction of the machine, what's happening around these? Which muscles are actually doing that movement? And so we can see, yeah, for sure, we've got this piriformis which attaches like that, but we've also got that glute max. And we've also got a portion of that glute minimus and a portion of that glute medius. So this is a key machine. We've also got this TFL, so we're starting to look at all those hip flexors. But today we're looking at hip extensors. So in that position, we've got a bunch of activity. If we take this machine and move it back, what's the joint angle now? So if that's 0 degrees, that's what, 20 degrees? It's actually 20 degrees, this machine. So what's in line? What's going to be the thing that pulls the hip in this direction? You've got this glute medius. You've got this glute minimus. You've also got a portion of that glute max. You remember where the attachment site is? And it's coming up to here. So that muscle's going to shorten as this abducts. So this is one of those machines that we're going to be getting you onto. So Luke, if you want to come and jump onto this for us, but I want you to really, really slowly start to abduct. So you've seen the skeleton, you know the muscles, you know where they attach. I want you to dial in, I want you to be diving underneath the skin and seeing this inside view. So the final one we're going to look at today is this glute bridge hip thrust thing, or whatever you want to call it. So Luke, will you just perform and just do a few reps of this so everyone can see? And the other thing I want you to do is just keep that spine aligned, so don't go into flexion, so your sternum should be moving at the same rate that your pubis is. Because we're looking, and it's the same on that exercise there, that hip extension, we're looking for this to be a hip thing. This is not a bad exercise, because there's no such thing as a bad exercise. We need a person, we need a goal. But the only thing I want you to think about with this, and this is kind of like my leg press there, or this is kind of like some sort of squat in on a ball on a wall. So this is as close to a close chain as we've got for this type of movement, if we were to pretend that this is one joint. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 axes there. So we don't know, just looking, that his glutes are doing all the work. And even though we might put a bar here, it's not the glutes that are guaranteed to do that, because all the bar's doing is actually adding to his mass, and the force that he's dealing with is actually coming in this direction and in this direction. It's really conceivable that his quads could be extending his knee that's pulling this up. And just by looking, or just by calling it a glute bridge, doesn't guarantee that it is. So we can start to bias it. Now so we've got some friction on the floor. If you just gently just pull your legs back a little bit, so keep them there, so I don't want them to move. But it's kind of like, so as you're moving through this, we can start to decrease the activity there, and we're bringing in the hamstrings, and it might shift these guys away from being a knee extensor. But even then, it's an exercise, but we need to build our repertoire, our library. The other thing to think about with this is that where are you weakest? You're weakest in that top position where the muscle's getting shorter. We might not want to do something that doesn't decrease, as in we want more of a challenge in that bottom position. And then the final thing with this exercise, and this is like the lat, the glutes are the same, we do not have one exercise. what is the range that these glutes are getting into? Just stop there, bring this leg up for everyone to see. That's that fully lengthened position. So, cool exercise, let's keep doing it, and let's start to add these other ones in there. Okay, I think we're done for today.
Perfect, Michael.
So we've looked at 3 things, and I want you guys to, the theme for today is for you to go and explore it. So you've got your anatomy, where do these muscles attach? So we can start to think, what are the functions around a joint? We start to look at how do we prepare the muscles, so we look to those isometrics, and then starting to explore these exercises which sometimes we leave off the table.
Perfect. Again, links in the description. Give Michael and Integra a follow. Thanks again.
Pleasure.